Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. This is the recap of last week's live stream. As such, this is the build-a-sode thing. Anyway, we're starting to plot out improvements for space stations, something that I'm really just still not very good at and trying to improve. We do need to make some improvements to Harmonia Station, but this prototype is actually intended to go to Venus sometime in the not-so-distant future. We don't have a launch window planned or anything like that, but we just decided to prototype things out here in the VAB to just kind of test the skills, test the water, and see what kind of thing we could come up with. So I did decide to unlock this cubic hub. It's passable according to connected living space, and we can scale it up and make it match some parts a little easier. But I also wanted to see about maybe creating a station with a rotating central axis for creating artificial gravity, seeing as how Kerbals tend to be on space stations for spans of about half a decade or so. I thought it might help improve their situation a little bit if maybe they had some kind of gravity going on. So we've created the central hub. It's going to rotate around the sideways axis. Anyway, so we've got two of those motorized Infernal Robotics docking washers. We're of course going to include a lab, and then we're going to try to balance it out with habitation modules and eventually a battery to kind of make up for the additional mass that the lab has. We would like them to be roughly equal, just to, I don't know, prevent a oscillation in the rotation that will be creating gravity. So there was some consideration here of parts. It turns out we have about a 2-ton differential. So initially I figured 4 of these habitation bubbles give us some extra space to work with. There you can kind of see what we're going for as far as the rotational axis is concerned. Works pretty well here in the VAB, so I just kind of assumed things would be a-okay. And of course, it will need to be reinforced by the first crew that shows up. And we actually can't attach anything to the sides of that central hub, which is a little weird in my eyes. But you know, I don't make the parts; I just work with them. So we're going to include a lot of these KIS struts so that the first crew out here can properly structurally reinforce the station. Although I don't know, there's some design choices here that I'm not exactly happy with. But we'll have plenty of time to address all of those. I have a feeling that I will be poking and prodding at this station for a very long time to come. So no worries on how ugly this thing is right now, because it will get changed a little drastically. But we did want to check with connected living space. Turns out nothing here is connectable as of yet. And I would like to actually use that mod. I've had it installed forever, since the beginning of this series, and I've never actually implemented it. But yeah, we're going to get rid of those safety bubbles because they're terrible, and we are instead going to include a ballast battery on the side of the habitation ring to make up for that missing 2 tons or so. But for right now, we're trying to figure out connected living space and how to make all of that work. And admittedly, it took me a little while, but with some gracious help from the chat, I do eventually figure it out. I prodded around at different docking ports and a few other things, trying to figure out how to make it so that crew could just easily transfer from the lab module into the hab module, or what eventually will be where an Artemis or similar system will dock, and then we can easily transfer crew into the station itself, because if this main axis part is rotating, we're going to have this problem of trying to swat Kerbals with a moving station as they're trying to board through EVA. So that's just, that's not a very viable solution. So turns out there's this part called the crew tube, and it's procedural, so you can make it to whatever shape you would like, and it is passable by crew, which is awesome. So we'll just form one of those to fit, and then copy it around a few times so that we can have perfect green access all the way across. So now we can move crew very easily from the lab to the hab, and hopefully we'll continue this system onto wherever the main docking board is, so that any arriving crew can just move cleanly inside the structure without having to EVA to their new positions. So with that part done, we'll move on to creating a energy generation structure, solar panel / radiator couple. We'll start off with a really big battery up top because, well, they're gonna need some battery supply, and then add some solar panels, scale them up, and make sure that we have good clearance on everything. Now that the battery is really massive. We'll end up scaling that back a little bit later, but there's some other solar panels I didn't know that we had. Rotation looks good. I mean, it is a little awkward with the size of things just being a little bit off, and that battery is just way too tall. I was worried about clearances and stuff, but we can scale that down to something more reasonable. And now we're going to add basically a ballast battery to the side of the HAB module to get it to the same mass as the laboratory itself. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but that is 2 tons worth of battery, give or take. Now, of course, it's not going to show us pivoting off axis due to unequal masses and rotation here in the VAB, but it would in space. So we're also going to go down to 2 solar panels. We're going to scale them up 200% because we can do that. And that gives us space for radiators, which we will also need. There's 2 of those. We might have to scale those up to larger ones later, but we will approach that situation as we get to it. For the time being, however, we're going to add 2 more crew tubes and docking ports on the other axis in case we decide to expand this station out to a 4-port at some point. We'll add a communications rig, 2 short comms, 2 long comms. And really, I don't know, I'm a little happier with this than I was when I started, but it's still just not quite right. And yeah, well, now we need to start thinking about how to dock crew to it, because obviously an Artemis or any embarking ship can't dock with the rotational axis portion. That would just be awful. So we're going to have to build another structure below the lab, or below the rotating ring, as it were, to allow crew to dock there. And well, this did actually present another interesting problem later on, in that the docking washers, the bits that actually make it spin, are not passable by connected living space. So we're actually going to have to take some unorthodox methods to make that thing, or to make that a viable method of entry and exit. But I think it's worth altering a config file to make that a thing, because it just doesn't seem fair. Anyway, we're just going to copy the superstructure itself down below. We don't need these rotational washers, so we'll just remove that. And yeah, this gives us a solid structure below the rotational points for a crew to dock that will not be spinning, thankfully, so they don't have to worry about hitting a rotational target. But man, it's so ugly. I cannot wait to go back in and kind of take this thing apart and readdress just how kind of wonky this whole thing is. Now, I was looking to see if I had a sub-assembly for an Artemis, because that will likely be the craft that comes out to dock to this thing. I do not have one, so we just took the command pod and a dummy tank sized out to the appropriate size just to get an idea of scale and how tight we can fit this in, because it looks way less awkward with it not taking out quite so much space. So anyway, we're going to put some stands on this so that we can take it outside and double test or double check to see if our rotational axis will work, and to see if we can bind them to action groups for continuous operation. But that is where all the fun, air quotes, started. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get this outside, and I will turn you over to Old Me for live commentary during the broadcast. The 2 of them are fighting against each other. Ah, dang it. This is a terrible idea. Why did you let me do this? Alright, edit groups. If we just spin one of them... Well, that's interesting. That is very, very interesting. You work fine in the VAB, dude. I could probably switch this one out for a freestanding washer. Alright. I guess I learned what I wanted to. So do I just, should I try to switch the rotational axis of one of them, or should I switch it out for a freestanding washer? And back now in the VAB, just to double check the operation in here, it seems like it should work. So I'm going to try to rotate this bottom washer just as a test. And yeah, now it seems like it should be fighting against the launch clamps for rotation. It should not have been doing that before, and yet it was. So we're going to remove the motorized washer and replace it with this free spinning washer. And basically this one lacks a motor, but anything on the above or below it that wants to spin, it should just let it spin. That's the plan anyway, to switch down to one motor and see if that doesn't fix this problem. So again, I will turn you over to old me for live commentary during the broadcast. Alright. Wobbles. This is working so incredibly well. So, where is... Oh, that's got the fixed base up there. Oh yeah, that should be fine. It should be... Where's my other docking washer? Yeah, okay, that should just spin freely. And the motor should be spinning this base part. But it's not. I don't quite understand this. Alright. I'm gonna do something that's generally against my rules. Hack gravity. Still nothing spins. That's very interesting. Alright then. Unhack gravity. It seems to have figured it out. I think Simulation Gaming has joined the cult of Boris. The anti-cult of Boris? Yeah, go back to the previous version and hack gravity there. Alright. Revert to the VAB. Oh, alright. I don't really know why that didn't work. It really seems to me like it should have. But we're going to ditch the free washer for another motorized one. We're just going to invert it and then get this back outside and run another test run. Old me, take it. Alright. Close. Let's see if this works without doing the dumb things. Almost. It almost works. I guess invert axis isn't really needed since they're facing opposed to each other. Uninvert axis. I wonder if they're trying to spin the part with the lowest mass. Alright, so let's try it the cheaty way. Hack gravity. Alright, we're gonna time warp so you can... Nope. That was a bad idea. That was a real bad idea. Oh boy. Alright, you know what? Yeah. Fly, my pretty. That's really interesting. There's, like, this center part still won't rotate. Come on, let me click on you. Yes, smash. Smash all the things. Pulsified, you might be right. I do not think this is a good idea either. Alright, how about engage lock? That one must be the one that's locked. So why won't you spin no matter what? Are they just not strong enough to spin that kind of tonnage, even in zero gravity? Because that just ruins everything for me. Like, they're both on this axis. So they should both rotate around just like they did in the VAB. But they just don't, and I'm wondering if they just lack the torque to spin this kind of mass. Because everything works in the VAB no matter what, even if it's like strutted together. Which is why we have to proof it outside. See, works great in here, even if you're spinning both washers. They should be working in conjunction with one another to spin that center section. And I don't quite understand why they're not, although I have a working theory now that I'm recording this here in post, and I've had some lovely help from all of you out there in trying to get this situation resolved, so hopefully we'll be able to figure something out, but I guess I've just ruined the entire rest of the episode for you. Anyway, we're going to run another test, so here's old me again. Like, I should just be able to do this, and yeah, now. It's like they're fighting each other. Yeah, neither one of them wants to spin. I guess this bottom one is trying to rotate this, and that's not working. So maybe, yeah, I probably should switch that one. And this is trying to... I don't understand why this top one doesn't... Oh, that's the fixed base. That's trying to rotate this, but while this is fixed, it's trying to rotate against this. I think I understand. Let's try something slightly different. I'm going to switch the top rototron around and see if that doesn't cure this. So the basics were that we figured out that the red dots that indicate the base part both need to be facing towards the center core, or at least we thought so. So we'll switch it around and then get it back outside for another test. Okay, so yeah, that part still firing against the base. So which one of you is struggling against the load at this point? That's definitely the bottom one, so why isn't the top one spinning those stupid solar panels? Yeah, it's like, it's not moving at all. Oh, this is so frustrating. Let me just try one more time with the hack gravity. Unhack gravity. Gravity is still hacked. Fire them off. I wonder if it's just a glitch because I sized them up. Because that's really, really annoying. Alright, revert to the VAB. Well, back now inside, we decided to take a different approach. Maybe we can just switch both of these washers out to free-moving washers, and then use either RCS or an engine of some kind to spin up the station and get the artificial gravity going. But first we wanted to test for connected living space against said docking washers. Yeah, see how nothing down there is highlighted? It means they're not passable. So most of this, as of this moment, was a waste of time. But as I mentioned earlier, I think we got something there figured out. But we want to figure out the rotation thing first. We'll get to the rest of these problems as we get to them. So we're going to switch them both out to freestanding washers, make sure that we have the correct part, switch over our lab for equal mass, and we're going to add a 1 kilonewton thruster here on the side and see if we can't absolutely make this space station spin the way we want it to. So here's old me, and we're going to test this out. Spun. You can go away. Connected living space. Hack gravity is probably still on. Wow, that was quite a jumble. Throttle, no SAS. We should probably do... Why do I have 2 engines? Oh, great. Let's do 1. Activate engine. Activate engine. Thank you. No, this isn't highly pressurized. Jeez. Next week's stream is going to be recording for episode 400. We'll actually only be at like 398 by the time we get there. But I will record it on Wednesday. And we can record episode 400 together. It'll go to tape and editing and then be uploaded on Saturday. So that when it comes into the lineup, it will actually be episode 400. Absolutely 0 rotation. Yeah, it was not what I wanted to click on at all. Okay. So, oh, that's the base. So that part's not going to rotate, and that's the base. So, okay, since this is, this whole, everything above this point should be rotating, but it is not. So you know what, we're just going to do one last test, revert, VAB, and we'll also call that the official announcement for the episode 400 live stream next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Anyway, that's that. We'll also try to brute force this with a very large engine, but yeah, old me will tell you all about it. Alright. Oh, it's seriously? You're gonna do that to me? You're gonna tell me you can't... I'm so angry. Wow. Oh, that only cost us $5 grand to figure out. So you know what doesn't need to be ullaged? Solid rocket motors. Solid rocket motors don't need to be ullaged. Nope. Nope. Come down here. Okay. It is. And it's not in 0G. Alright, go. Really? This is super interesting. Because really, everything above this hinge should just be spinning freely. And it's not. See, that thing is actually struggling against us. It looks like. He's docking rotation. Thanks. Thanks for your rotation there, buddy. Are you going to tell me that... It says y'all are free moving. You're obviously not free moving, because nothing is moving. Alright, well, that was interesting and kind of a failure. So much disappointment. I don't understand why these parts aren't working, and I can only assume it's because I've scaled them up. Sorry, old me. Scaling is probably not the problem. You just haven't quite figured out how to use these infernal robotics, hence the name. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry we didn't figure much out, but something to do in weeks to come. So until then, see you later.